Good morning, students. In this lecture, I will explain some very basic concepts of logical reasoning. By logic, I mean the science that studies arguments, okay? So logic is the study of the principles and concepts of good reasoning. Obviously, this implies that there is bad reasoning, and that is one of the tasks of logic. Logicians studies the way to determine what's the difference between a bad and a good argument. Naturally, logicians are not interested in the reasons behind one's argumentations. I mean, I'm not interested in determining why you think something is the case. Rather, I'm interested in the concepts themselves. I'm interested in the principles themselves. And the subject matter of logic is, as I said, arguments. Okay? By arguments, I don't mean verbal disputes among people. I mean something very specific. But before I return to the definition of arguments and the explanation of what arguments are, I want to explain something very important, not only in logic, but in philosophy in general. And that is the distinction between analytic and synthetic judgments. By judgments, I mean statements or sentences. Now, a sentence, if you think about it, is something that has two components, at least. It has a subject, and it has a predicate. Of course, it has a verb too, and we're going to talk about the verb and the function of the verb. Now, in this example, all bachelors are unmarried men. We have the word bachelors, which is the subject. The subject is always the one that does the action or receives the action, remember. So bachelors is the subject term. Also, we have the words unmarried men. And these two words represent the predicate term of the sentence. And of course, we have the word are, which is the verb, and we are going to talk in a minute about the function of the verb. So, sentences have a subject and a predicate. All sentences have at least subject and a predicate. Now, when do we call a sentence or a statement or a judgment an analytic one? A sentence is analytic just if the concept expressed by the predicate is also contained by the concept expressed by the subject. In other words, think about here the sentence. All triangles are three-sided figures. When you take the word three-sided figures, what is the meaning of three-sided figures? What is the concept being expressed by these words? Well, as you can see, the concept, the meaning expressed by these words is precisely the concept or the meaning expressed by the subject term, which is all triangles, because three-sided figures are triangles. Now, by three-sided figures, I mean figures, geometrical figures that have only three sides, okay? So that's what I mean by that. Those are triangles. And also, if you think about it, the concept of all triangles is expressed, again, by the predicate term, three-sided figures. Now, what is the function of the verb are in between subject and predicate? So when I say all triangles are three-sided figures, I literally mean that all triangles are exactly three-sided figures. Or in other words, I could substitute the verb are with an equal sign. I can say all triangles equals three-sided figures. So again, an analytic statement is analytic if and only if, when you think about the meaning of the predicate, which in this case is three-sided figures, that meaning is what defines the subject, all triangles. Think about the contrast between analytic and synthetic. Now, a synthetic statement is completely different from an analytic one. A judgment or a statement is synthetic just if the predicate concept, okay, the concept expressed by the predicate is not or does not define the concept expressed by the subject. As you can see in this example, all bachelors are tall. Now, the concept expressed by the word tall, being tall, tallness, does not define or is not contained in the definition of what it is to be a bachelor. Now, of course, a bachelor may be tall, but that's not how you define a bachelor. If you look up the word bachelor in a dictionary, well, you will find is a definition more or less that says that a bachelor is a male who has not been married before and is not married right now. That is a bachelor. You will never find any definition of the word bachelor as an individual who is tall. Tallness does not figure at all in the definition of bachelors. So in this case, tall, or the predicate term, is not the definition of the subject term. In other words, tallness is not or does not mean what it is to be a bachelor. And notice here the function of the verb are. In the previous example, in the example of an analytic statement, I use the verb are to mean equal. So all triangles are in the sense of equal. They are the same thing as three-sided figures. But here is different, because when I say that all bachelors are, I don't mean that all bachelors are exactly what tallness is. Tallness is a description of a bachelor's. In this case, all bachelors. So it's not that we define bachelors as tallness. Bachelors will have that property if it's true. Some bachelors at least have that property, the property of tallness. But that's something that is attached to the subject. It's not inherent within the subject. Okay. Now, all objects occupy space. Is this a synthetic or an analytic statement? If you answered analytic, you're right, because all objects occupy space. It is an analytic statement because that is the definition of what it is to be an object is exactly something that occupies space. Now think about it. What is the definition of an object? That's what an object is. It's something that exists in space, okay, in time too. So occupying space is what it is to be an object. What about the sun will rise tomorrow? Is the sun rising tomorrow an analytic or a synthetic statement? Well, if you answered synthetic, you're right, because rising tomorrow, the concept of something that rises tomorrow, is not inherent, intrinsic. It's not part of the definition of what it is to be the sun. The sun is not defined as whatever rises tomorrow. The next distinction I wanted to talk about is the distinction between a priori and a posteriori. Now, these two words, strange words, are from Latin. A priori means prior to. Okay, so prior to what? Well, prior to experience. And a posteriori, posterior, it means after experience or on the basis of experience. Now, what do I mean by experience? By experience, I mean anything that comes through your senses. You touch something, you experience it. So, for example, if you never touched a kangaroo, you don't know what a kangaroo feels like when you touch it. Okay, so the first time you touch it, that's an experience. If you never heard what an accordion sounds like, if I play it for you, you hear it. That's an experience. If you have never seen let's see, I want to find some funny example. Well, okay, if you have never seen what a mushroom looks like, once you see the mushroom, then you have the experience. Okay, so all your senses, you smell too. If you never experienced, for example, how many of you experienced the smell of the fruit durian? Now, the durian fruit has a very peculiar smell. If you have never experienced that before, that's what I mean by experience. You smell it now, that it constitutes an experience. Okay, so what do we call a priori? A judgment is a priori if it can be known independently of experience. So if I make a judgment and I know that it is true or false, not on the basis of experience. I don't touch it, I don't feel it, I don't see it, I don't hear it, but I know it, that it is true. How do I know that it is true? Well, I know that it is true because I understand the meaning of the words, the meaning of the terms, subject and predicate. And I know that one term means the other. For example, how do we know that all bachelors are unmarried men? All you need to do is not really experience a bachelor. You don't need to experience a bachelor to meet a bachelor and ask, are you a bachelor? Yes. Are you married? No. You don't need that kind of experience. You only need to, for example, open a dictionary and look up the word bachelor, and you will find out that by virtue of meaning, the word bachelor means unmarried man. Now, I know what you're thinking. But isn't looking up the word in a dictionary an experience? Of course, it is a sort of experience. But the point of dividing judgments by a priori and a posteriori is the idea that once you know that a bachelor is an unmarried man, the meaning of the bachelor is someone, a male, who is not married. Okay? And once you know the meaning of words, you don't need any other experience once you have learned this. What I say down there on the bottom of the slide, true in all possible worlds, what does that mean? Well, it means the following. This is another tool, another technique or trick to understand what an a priori statement or judgment is. Okay, think about it this way. If you lived in a different world, in a completely different world, with different rules, with different beings, any kind of world, a world where cakes fly in the sky, a world where people are green and they wake up in the morning and they're red. In fact, not a world with people, a world with some kind of beings. You can imagine whatever world you want, as bizarre as you want. A world with unicorns, a world with Martians, a world where water poisons you and poison you can drink it, whatever you want. I don't care which world you're imagining, but the point is this, that in that world that you imagine, a bachelor is an unmarried man. Now, if we accept the definition of a bachelor as a male who has never been married and is not married, then any kind of world that you imagine, a bachelor will be an unmarried man in any kind of world. Okay, so the statement that a bachelor is an unmarried man will be true in all possible worlds. It cannot be otherwise. Let me give you another example. Is it possible, for example, that a square in a different world has more or fewer than 4 sides? Obviously, that's impossible, because let's say, for example, that it has 3 sides. Well, that's not a square, because a square is defined as a geometrical figure that has only exactly 4 straight sides. Just like a triangle is defined as something that has only 3 sides. So it's a logical contradiction to say that a triangle does not have 3 sides or could have more than 3 sides. That's what an a priori judgment is. It is true in all possible worlds. It is self-evident. It is self-evident. Once you learn the words bachelors, unmarried man, triangle, 3 sides, you can see it. It's self-evident. Self-evidently true. So, all bachelors are unmarried men. How do you know this? Do you know it because you have talked to all the bachelors in the world? And think about it. You probably have not, I'm pretty sure that no one has talked to all the bachelors in the world. And yet, if I ask you, why are you so confident? Have you talked to all the bachelors in the world? And you say to me, no, I haven't. So how could you possibly know that all bachelors are unmarried men? And your answer is going to be, well, because I don't need to. I don't need to talk to all the bachelors in the world. All I need to do is to define the word bachelors. And the word bachelors tells me that we're talking about unmarried men. So all bachelors are unmarried men. If you're a bachelor and I haven't spoken to you, I have not interviewed you, you don't have to tell me. I already know. How? I know it by virtue of meaning, on the basis of the meaning alone, not on the basis of the experience. Conversely, a judgment is known to be a posteriori. Just if you, in order to know whether it's true or false, you need an experience. You need to experience. So, for example, if I say that some bachelors are happy, that's possibly true. Some bachelors in the world are happy. Well, actually, if you ask bachelors, they might say to you, we're all happy. But that's a bad joke. So bad joke aside, how do you know that some bachelors are happy? You can't just think about the word bachelors. You really have to experience bachelors who are happy. You really need to go in the world outside and ask a bachelor, a person, a male, are you a bachelor? Yes. Now, once he tells you that he's a bachelor, you don't know automatically that he's happy. You have to ask, are you happy? Yes, I am. Okay? So that constitutes an experience. So in the case of an analytic statement, you don't need that experience. If I say all triangles have 3 sides, or a square is something that has 4 sides, do you know that all squares have 4 sides? Of course. But have you seen them all? No. Do you need to see them all? No, you don't. All you need to do is to take the word square or triangle or bachelor and understand the meaning. And the meaning, rather than the experience, will tell you whether something is true or false. On the other hand, synthetic statements don't tell you the truth of that statement just by thinking about it. Whether a bachelor is happy, it's something that you have to establish on the basis of experience. Another example. All mushrooms are tasty. Or my brother wears red shoes. So all these statements are either true or false, only on the basis of whether in fact there is a fact in the world that makes them true or false. Namely, my brother's wearing red shoes, and all bachelors being happy, and so on. So as you can see from this chart, a priori propositions, those propositions that are true independently of fact or facts, but dependently on meaning, they are all analytic, okay? Because analytic means that the meaning of the predicate defines the meaning of the subject. On the other hand, a posteriori statements or judgments are always synthetic. Now, for those of you who are more advanced in philosophy, you might observe that there's something missing here. Because according to Immanuel Kant, there are such things as synthetic a priori judgments. So, according to Kant, I would have to place an X right there. Okay? But let's overlook Kant. How can you overlook Immanuel Kant? But anyway, let's put it on the side for now. It's not important right now, for the purpose of this lecture, of course. Now, tell me whether the following are analytic or synthetic. You can pause the video and test your knowledge. Fire burns your fingers. Now, how do you define fire? Fire is defined as a combustion or burning, not burning of fingers, burning in the sense of combustion, in which substance combined chemically with oxygen. Okay, that's the definition of fire. Fire is not defined by burning your fingers. Consequently, how do you know that fire burns your fingers? You have to experience it. You always have to experience it. And if you experienced it once, how do you know that the next fire will burn your finger? Well, of course, after a lot of experience, you will know it. You will know better than put your hand in the fire. But suppose that you are a child, and the first time you see a fire, you touch the fire, you burn your finger. There's no possible way that you know that all fire, everywhere, in all circumstances, in all situations, will burn your finger. You will have to do it a couple more times. Of course, if your parents don't tell you anything, your parents, the first time, they will tell you, don't do it again, because fire burns your fingers. But if no one tells you anything, you will have to try a couple of times. Imagine you are a primitive person, okay, and you touch fire for the first time. You say, ooh, that burned. It's got a nasty feeling, sensation. But you see another fire. You don't know if it's going to do it again. So you will have to do it again, burn your finger, and then you start thinking, maybe I shouldn't do it again. But in other words, this whole explanation is to tell you that this is not a synthetic, this is not an analytic statement, okay? It is a synthetic statement. Burning your fingers is not the definition of what fire is. The shortest distance between 2 points is a straight line. This is tricky. This is tricky because we all know that a line is in fact the shortest distance between 2 points, at least in Euclidean geometry. Okay, in non-standard geometry, obviously, for example, physicists talk about bending time, and so if you bend in time and space, so if you do that, if you bend space, then it's not really a straight line, the shortest distance between 2 points, but a curve at that point. Now, the point, however, is that a straight line, the word is straight line, the meaning of straight line, is a line traced by a point traveling in a constant direction, or a line of zero curvature. And as I said, in space, for example, a curved line is the shortest distance between 2 points. So you don't define a straight line as the shortest distance between 2 points. Consequently, the shortest distance between 2 points as a straight line is a synthetic proposition. What about a rat is a rodent? Well, this is an analytic statement. Why? Because a rodent is the very definition of a rat. A rat equals a rodent. Okay, let me go back before, because I'm already thinking what your question might be. Some people might say, wait a minute, a rat is a rodent, but a rodent is not a rat. True, but remember that the definition of an analytic statement is the following. A statement is analytic just if the meaning of the predicate term is contained in the meaning of what it is to be the subject. So, what does rodent mean? Rodent. I mean, what does the word rodent express? It expresses the meaning of rat. Rat is defined as a rodent. Or in other words, when you look inside the concept rat, okay, you unpack the concept rat, what you see inside is the word rodent. Or in other words, other words, if you look up the word rat in a dictionary, what do you find? Well, you find that a rat is defined as a rodent. That's an analytic statement. There are prime numbers larger than Graham's number. Now, what is Graham's number? Graham's number is a very, very large number. It's a number that is bigger than the number of atoms in the observable universe. Now, this is a tricky statement, but if you think about it logically, as in fact this is a lecture in logic, how many numbers are there? Well, there are an infinite number of numbers. And so how many prime numbers exist? Well, again, an infinite number of prime numbers. So I don't care that the Graham's number or any other number is very large. It's bigger than the number of atoms in the universe, or the number of sand, grains of sand. All I need to know is that since their numbers go on forever, and consequently prime numbers go on forever, then it must be true by logical necessity, without any sort of experience, that there are prime numbers that are larger than Graham's number, just by logical definition of what it is to be a number. What about snow is white? Well, some people are tempted to say that snow is white is an analytic statement because that's how you define snow. But in fact, you define snow as an atmospheric water vapor. Now, the fact that it's white is not the definition, the very definition of snow. It is an accident. It is a contingent fact of the world that we see snow as white. We don't really know what color snow is, indeed, in fact. A triangle, for example, has three sides by definition. Okay, so three-sidedness, having three sides, is a constituent of being a triangle. But being white is not a constituent of being snow. In fact, white is the definition of white is the lightest color, and it is something achromatic. This is not the definition of snow. It's not contained in snow. So here the verb is not used as equal, because snow is not equal to white. Snow has a characteristic that is attached to it, and that is white. What about this? This is a famous example. 7 plus 5 is 12. If you answer that this is a synthetic statement, you're right, because the definition of 7 plus 5 is not 12. Why? Because 12 can be 6 plus 6. Or 4 times 3 is 12. 12 does not have to be 7 plus 5. Okay? Ice is frozen water. Well, what's the definition of ice if not frozen water? So it's an analytic statement. Planet Earth rotates on its axis. Once again, the definition of planet Earth is not that thing that rotates on its axis. It is true that it does, but It's not something inherent in what it is to be planet Earth. You can imagine planet Earth rotating, and at one point it stops rotating. Well, obviously, it's not a desirable situation. No one desires that, but it's a logical possibility. So it's a synthetic statement. What about this? All objects have weight. Well, by definition, an object does not have weight. An object is something that occupies space, but if it has weight, we have to talk about gravity. Okay? So you don't define objects as things that have weight. Consequently, this is a synthetic proposition. What about a red object is colored? Obviously, by definition, if an object is red, by definition, it is colored. It has a color. Okay, so this is an analytic statement. What about this? Objects released in air fall downward. Well, objects are not defined as those things that fall downward when released in air. That's something you discover through experience. The sun is 92.96 million miles from Earth. This, once again, is something that you discovered through experience. You cannot know this by the definition of the sun. So it's a synthetic statement. Donald Trump is the President of the United States. Well, once again, this is being the President of the United States, obviously, does not define Donald Trump. So this is a synthetic statement. And it's true now. Water drowns. This is similar to the example of fire. Fire burns fingers. Water drowns. You don't know that water drowns until you experience it. I hope you don't. No one experiences this. But it's not something that you can know just by looking at water or by defining the term water. The coronavirus is a bitch. Well, I'll let you decide if it's an analytic or a synthetic statement. Okay, so what I have said so far is this, that analytic propositions are true and deducible by definition, just by the definition of the words, the terms. The opposite is always conceivable. The opposite is not conceivable. Okay, so a triangle has three sides. A triangle does not have three sides. You cannot conceive of a triangle that doesn't have three sides. The predicate term defines the subject. Okay, and also analytic propositions are known prior to experience. You don't need to experience a triangle in order to know that it has three sides. On the other side, we have synthetic propositions. These propositions are not true or deducible by definition. You have to discover them through experience. The opposite is always conceivable. For example, the sun will rise tomorrow. The sun will not rise tomorrow. No one desires that the sun will not rise tomorrow, but I can conceive that it will happen. The earth rotates on its axis. The earth does not rotate on its axis. Again, conceivable. All bachelors are happy. All bachelors are unhappy. Both logically conceivable. The predicate term does not define the subject. All the bachelors are tall. Tallness does not define the subject bachelors. And it is impossible to know prior to experience. If I say that there are children playing in the playground right now, it's not possible for you to know that there are unless you go to the playground and you verify, you experience it. Okay. Great job. Now let's discuss arguments in the next video.